Hello, everybody, and welcome back from Thanksgiving break to this episode of Presentation Hell, podcasting from Embark Studios in Tampa, Florida. My name's James Ontra, and I'm here with Sarah Stokes.
Hello.
Sarah, how are you today?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
So, on a simple note, tell us who you are, where you come from,
Sure.
and what do you do? What's special?
Okay, so you can tell from my accent, I'm from England, not from Tampa. First and foremost, I'm a wife and a mum.
Okay.
I've got 2 teenage kids, and they keep us on our toes. We're loving this journey, so we live.
Simple word, challenging.
Do you know what? I think challenging, yes, but also so fun. And it's
right.
going so fast. So, we live here. We've been here for 10 years. My husband's South African, so we've got quite an interesting cultural setup at home. So that's pretty much who I am at the core. But in a professional capacity, I work for Foundry, which is part of the International Data Group. And I've kind of, to distill it down, I think I've honed a career on 3 main things. So one is developing sustainably high-performing teams. Another is solving operational transformation challenges. And the third is putting my head where it hurts, finding those difficult problems and fixing them. So that's kind of who I am professionally. My title, if to go that route, is I'm a Global Senior Vice President of Demand Generation Operations, which is quite a mouthful.
I was about to say the same words. I was tripping over my tongue listening to it.
I'm sure I can make that simpler. But that's me in a nutshell.
So I'm going to ask a few questions about that.
Sure.
Sustainable, high-performing teams.
Yes.
What are we talking about? Are we talking about an engine for a company using humans as the pistons?
Sure. I mean, in some cases, yes. I mean, when you go through transformation, inevitably you're introducing systems or platforms or processes that can be automated to some degree. But human beings have such a great value. And it's about applying that value, but doing it in a way that is sustainably high performing, to repeat the phrase. But
you can't define something with the same words in the phrase. I mean, you can't do that. You got to give more.
Well, if you put it in, there are lots of different ways that this can come together. So if you are running a team whose job is to achieve X, then the measure of success is achieving X and doing so quickly, effectively, with as little thrash or challenge as possible. So how do you create that ecosystem? How do you create those workflows? How do you motivate? How do you keep people invested to do that day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out? So that's what I mean about high performing teams. Okay.
Can we take it to an actual hard, like something people can wrap their head around, as opposed to the esoteric, because I know you're talking about it, but like if I said, and I have no idea what your real business is on that end, but if I said, an oil company has a problem with moving petrochemical from one continent to another, getting it off the boat and into the gas station so that you can drive around. The boats can't get into a deep harbor. Give us something that we can dig through.
So in my business, it's a little less tangible because we deal with, in a nutshell, sort of non-tangible products. So within Foundry, you're talking about brand to demand marketing strategies being fulfilled, or you're talking about demand gen and leads and things like that.
Brand to demand. Okay.
So
I'm trying to break it down.
This is good. So let me back up a bit and tell you a bit about Foundry, because that'll color it in. So Foundry is part of the International Data Group, and Foundry IDG, exactly right. And Foundry.
They're also analysts, or no?
IDC, which is part of the International Data Group, have our big analysts.
Okay. So all right.
So Foundry essentially connects IT and tech buyers and anyone in that buying cycle, that buying team, to IT and tech sellers. So what you're doing is you're brokering that connection. And we do that because we've got 50 years of phenomenal brand presence. So any of the CIO, the CSO, the network world, the computer world, the Mac world, those are all Foundry brands. And so from a media perspective, you're able to create really rich content to drive marketeers' objectives, whether that's brand awareness, and you're able to drive that through into the demand generation cycle. Because as part of all of those brands, you've got this enormous gold of data, of fully subscribed tech professionals, IT buyers that are engaged with Foundry, and you're able to layer on with that all of these really rich, intense signals. And that gets you down to the nitty gritty of person in market looking to buy and connecting that with the person who's selling that particular product, or connecting those two. So that's the Foundry world. And you've got additional areas of that, like at events. We host 800 plus events globally, which is about connecting IT professionals. So that's my world. And what that means is I'm not taking oil from one place.
No,
to
I know.
the next.
I'm trying to give it, like when you said brand to demand, I was thinking, oh, Nike's a brand, therefore I go get things. But you never see an ad of, they don't tell you the rubber on the sole is great.
Yeah.
They say you win, you compete. And that's a brand, and that generates demand. But that's not what you're talking about. That's what I thought about first. What you're talking about is tech products, data products. You're talking about, are you talking about B2B when I say business to business, or are you talking about like Airbnb that's consumer?
You're talking B2B, and that B2B tech buying and tech selling environment is extremely complex.
Yes.
Super competitive. Yes. So
I do that for a living. In a way, I just try to break in and scratch on the outside and hopefully let me in.
But exactly that point is that you if you take that buying cycle, there are 20 plus people involved in some of these buying cycles.
Yes.
And so you have a
compliance, legal, you have the IT people, the actual people who use it, the people who use it on the back end, the ones who implement it, who are the admins, how many extra people are going to be used to make this thing work? Why am I doing it? How do I get out of it? If you sent me down a rabbit hole, it's, do I trust and love you or not? Or can you deliver?
Yeah.
And, I'll show my age. There was a statement that said, well, no one got fired for hiring IBM. Because of the brand, therefore you made the right choice.
Yeah. And that's what Foundry does is we are the experts in this space, in this tech space, and because of our brands, because of our leverage in the market, you've got your buyers are engaged with the Foundry brands, and so when you are connecting the two, you have to take into account.
Are you a marketplace?
A
marketplace for B2B.
Oh, okay.
Like in a way, let's just say I had a B2B piece of software that is greenfield, and it's a category creation tool where there's no one in that category because people haven't recognized it yet. But just like Uber, you waited in taxi lines forever. And the moment you picked up your phone and said, crap, I can get it here and it'll be there in a minute, you never waited in a taxi line again. If you had a product like that, how would they approach you? What would they do? You know what I mean? If I had Uber and I wanted to sell it to corporations, would you be the place that would help sell it through? What? Give me some. How about ReliaQuest, the biggest tech cyber company here in Tampa?
So, if you are a tech company selling a tech solution, then yes, you want to be engaged with Foundry, because what you're doing with that is saying, okay, let's say you have your marketing objective is that you want to achieve a certain penetration in X. You
want the top 10,000 companies in the world, the C-suite of them, to choose and say, oh, I like that or I don't like that. But the decision was made. They looked at it. They said, all right, that's kind of cool, but it's not for us. Or I like that. Like, is that what we're talking about?
Yes. At the first instance, it's let's get your brand out there. Let's say you want to start.
All right, so you're selling consulting to market your company. So you got to make sure that your client has cash.
Yeah, but you also want to do it, and you're talking presentation hell here. You want to be telling compelling stories.
That's right.
You want to be telling
from painful presentations to better stories. If you can tell better stories, you can convince people. They feel better about it. They understand. See, I'm trying to pull a story out of you, and I'm getting all this esoteric stuff. I'm getting all the we're dealing with data, and it's this, and they're B2B, and
that's part of the challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. Like, how do we make up something that people take as real?
So when you boil it down, is that if we were to take you,
me, okay,
Shuffler.
We do presentations for corporations. We make better presentations through a presentation library.
So you would leverage the IDG brands, the CIO, the CSO, to make sure you're getting your name out there.
Yeah, the chief marketing officer who needs to hear it, because when the marketing officer says, wow, we have like 6 channels of communications. We do TV, radio, billboards, print, the web, social media.
But you want to meet your people where they're buying, where they're looking, where they're researching.
Overlook presentations. probably arguably as important as all of those, because if you don't buy what I'm selling you right here, belly to belly, it doesn't matter what the ad says in Times Square on New Year's Eve. I got to tell you, that makes a difference. So presentations are important.
It is, but when it comes to tying that to Foundry, it's about getting the right eyeballs with the right engagement. So you have like a nanosecond to do that.
That's right.
You got to touch it and you got to have some impact. Now, what Foundry will do can surround sound you and get you in the right spots. What it also does is with the data, you talked about the C-suite there, you know who your guys are, you know who you need to get in, who you need to pull in. We have that data, so we're able to, if you like, broker that connection. And the output of it is rich, informed business intelligence that's going to your sales teams. That then say, okay, these people in market, they're looking right now, they're looking at options. Maybe we've seen them look at different presentation options.
You're a better lead service? Is that what you're telling me?
We're an outstanding lead service.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Outstanding. I only went for better. You went to outstanding.
No, we're outstanding. We're outstanding.
Because you know what they're thinking and talking about at the date and time. It's not just...
When you're layering on intent and you're really looking into that buyer's cycle, that buyer's journey, that's rich information. Now, I can't control what your sales team does. What I can do is get you people who are interested in this area of your
So you don't actually transact, you just market. You're a consultancy marketing, you're a marketing
we are able to make sure we'll meet your marketing objectives through the brands and then through delivery of rich data into your sales team. So now you mentioned it's esoteric. Thank you very much.
Well, it's kind of like it's in the cloud. You're talking about
it means, soup nuts, is that your sales team get on the phone call and they're calling someone who's shown interest in what you're selling. Right. Now that's gold.
That is gold, because it's all about connections. You don't want to waste time. You know, and that's why I said I'd rather hear a no than let me float along for 6 extra weeks and then get a no. I was like, if you're up front, say, listen, we looked at this, we're not ready for it. You can call me in 6 months, I might be, but right now the answer is no.
Exactly.
You respect that person. I like that type of stuff. Well, I shouldn't say I like no's, but I am saying that I prefer an answer than a waffling type of situation.
Sure.
And you're saying Foundry cues them up for this time and place in the moment. It's like sending someone to the cotillion ball when you know what I mean. It's the time and place.
It's the time and place, because you know just throwing stuff at a wall isn't working.
No,
you've
freaking
got to,
sucks.
You've got to use your information wisely. You've got to get the right information, the right cues, the right time, the right point. And now, as you were saying about the B2B. The B2B buying group is so large, and they've got different pain points. They've got different things that they're paying attention to. So if you can leverage a company like Foundry, who's cognizant of that and can help you work through, okay, well, you know, an admin's got completely different objectives to the CFO. Yeah, and then legal, and then so on. And so
they
forth.
have different. They all have their own personal goals, and they all want to look good. They all want to get a raise. They want to pick something that makes them look good, that benefits the company and all that. Well, not everyone does that, but they want to be perceived as doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's important. That goes into that. So I don't know. I might wait. Well, I'll just ask you right here.
Sure.
Why Tampa for this type of business? Why did IDC? I know it's IDC. I know they own both companies. I get that. The parent company is IDG. Okay.
The parent company is IDG.
Okay.
And so we
International Data Group.
International Data Group. Yeah, exactly. So Foundry's head office is in Boston. And so we have...
all those tech brain companies come from Boston.
So we have... we
Charles
have a footprint all over. We have a global footprint in terms of offices, and which is fantastic. But we also have some remote working.
Your UK office was my client, by the way.
There you
go. Just letting you know that
on
a low level, they didn't move up the chain, but it did happen.
So we got a base in London, and I work remotely from Tampa.
So, what do you mean you work remotely? We're sitting in Tampa right now. You said there's an office. You work remotely, so there isn't a Tampa. You are the Tampa office.
for Foundry, pretty much.
Okay, I just want to try to dig to the source here.
It's good, but you're talking about a 50-year-old enormous company.
Well, there's credibility behind it. It's like saying I'm coming in as Raymond James and I'm opening an office.
Yeah,
you've got credibility. It's a brand to market. That's where these things come together.
There you go.
It all comes together. I see the way this whole thing works. No, that makes sense. What type of business? And I guess if you're doing stuff online, you're selling people all over the country.
Oh yeah,
all over the world.
All over the world.
Yeah, forget that. I mean,
we are a global company, so we have I have teams globally. We have a really big footprint in each of the key regions, so it's a busy company.
Presentation Hell is brought to you by Presentation Hell, the book. From painful presentations to better stories. If you tell better stories, you will sell more merchandise. Earlier in the podcast here, we were talking about how B2B business gets, and when I say B2B, I'm talking about software businesses being sold to large companies, right? And they're targeting the high end. If I wanted, like, this is Microsoft selling to a big one, and I'm not. That's the supersized part of it. But there's people who sell cyberware and data processing and devices and things that make data centers worthwhile, and they're things that'll make most people glaze over, and not even like, oh my God, really? But and then after they're glazed over, they look at the balance on the bottom. They go, wow, now I'm glazed over, and that's where everything changes on that. Really interesting stuff. And you're here in Tampa, but listening to the audio, I'm going to say you didn't come from Tampa. No. So Sarah, tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey to this. Like what brought you into this leadership position at IDG in the Foundry and makes you professionally you, and the personal things that make the professional you.
Sure. Okay. So started off in London in your advertising and marketing agencies in London, and I bounced around a few there. And then I started as a founding partner for a mobile software development company.
Mobile software development founding partner, so 2008.
This is when I'm dating myself now, but when cell phones came out and you started to look at websites on cell phones, and so that was the company that I was a founding partner of, which was how you translate
like the responsive programming. HTML5 changed everything when that came in and did
that world.
Basically, HTML5 is a higher grade of HTML. The first part of the internet was on HTML, and it was just straight up HTML5 allows a website to be live, meaning you ever type in a new number and just get off it and the rest of the page changes? That's the difference.
So that was a company we had in London. And then my husband got this amazing opportunity to come over here for a couple of years. And he, on a cold and wet, dreary December day, he said, "Hey, do you want to go to Tampa?" I was like, "Yeah." And so we packed up.
So you're describing the weather in London versus Tampa.
Yeah, it was a tough winter. And so we came.
Tampa's beautiful, by the way. There's the weather is intense. The beaches are beautiful.
It's just stunning.
Don't tell anybody.
We came over here, and that was 10 years ago. And so we fell in love with Tampa. It's just been a lovely fit for our family. And so once we were here, I was approached by Foundry to tackle one of the problems they were having. And so I came on board and started working for them, and then became an employee of Foundry, and then been very lucky, had huge opportunity there. Huge opportunity
during a growing time when data was booming. They needed people. Growth was there. Companies were going. Income was coming.
And if you're a big company, you need someone who can work operations. You need someone who can see the cogs of the business and make it work together. You need someone who.
Have you actually worked in a big company and been accountable for those cogs in the machines that were put into play?
Accountable. Well, I am accountable for those cogs and machines in Foundry.
Okay, all right. No, that's fair enough. Yeah. That's because I have been given a lot of advice by people who were paid a little and people who were paid a lot.
Yeah.
And generally, sometimes they're not that far apart in value once implemented.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about operations. And you were talking earlier about those tech companies selling solutions. I'm also part of that buying cycle. So I get it from both sides. I understand what it's like to have companies come and sort of sell you their wares. And you have to be the one saying, okay, but operationally, how am I going to implement it? How am I going to get value from it? How am I going to work it? How am I going to make sure that this accelerates my business and ultimately accelerates revenue? So, there is a real need for.
Oh, there's a definite need there.
People to understand that and commit to the solution.
Well,
and make it work.
That's the thing. There's a lot of commitment when a company at that level commits, that means hundreds, maybe thousands of people might be changing their actions to do whatever is going on. And sometimes there is results that you didn't anticipate.
Sure. And that's, I find that, I mean, this is an area I find naturally very interesting. I like the way cogs work. I like the way engines work. I like the way there's a certain feeling you get when a business is running smoothly, it hums. And that's
you wouldn't continue up the chain if that wasn't the case, by the way. And just as an evidence of how people go up, it's usually when you hit that point and miss that moment that you start
to plateau. So that's an area I find fascinating. But you're absolutely right. The adoption cycle and the drop off isn't always clear at the beginning. The benefits, the risks and the gains. You think you're going here, and then when you implement it, you might find, I didn't expect that. How do you then navigate that? Or you didn't expect that response, and what you thought was actually a shoe-in is a little bit more complicated. So it's,
You raised 2 kids here in Tampa.
Yes.
What you just said, apply that to the kids.
They get that applied to them all the time.
Yeah, you say, I want you to do this. You have a goal in mind to get them to do something, and you try to coerce them, you try to pay them, you try to give them compliments, you try to threaten them, you try to remove things from them, you try to give them love, you try to give them space, you try to give them no space.
You've got kids, eh?
and all of a sudden, it all works out.
Well,
and it has nothing. It has a lot to do with you, but it doesn't. You have to trust it.
You got to trust. I mean, we've got fantastic kids, and our 17-year-old. He's forging his own way. This is about where.
What does that mean, being 17 in Tampa, from a mom's point of view? It's because that's the point of view you can give as a candidate. I have a 17-year-old.
Okay, so I mean, it's amazing. From one side, there are so many opportunities, and the world is so open and so exciting. And on the other side, I'm like, oh, just drive safely. So you've got
there's the two sides,
exactly.
Because the experience they gain from not driving safely is what makes them a tougher character growing up further. It's hard. That balance is kind of crazy.
The balance is then that
you want to throw them in the fire, but you don't want them to burn. And you want them to come out with the wisdom you have and the strength you have without ever having the scars.
But they're going to learn it themselves.
But you can't do that. So, and that's the balance that's really, that's all part of life. And then you get to a point where they don't need you anymore. And hopefully if you've done your job right, they'll naturally want good things for and by you as time goes by, because it's a lonely freaking life after 50, if not.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you've got this, part of doing your job right is that they're ready to launch. And that's also part of the heartbreak of it.
Or they might just come home when you never know that's going to happen.
They can always come home.
Right? Couldn't that happen, Kate? So that is so true. We've got something in common there, which is a good thing. So I'm going to kind of bring this around to where we're at. We're at Embark Collective here. This is a collective of tech startups, many of them with dreams of selling to these tech companies, to the big companies, and they have tech software that to the average person, you get the glazed over look. To the right techie, you've got a party and suddenly you're popping beers and eating chips and going to town, watching football. Who knows what you're doing? So with what little you know about Embark, how could the Foundry, it's not the Foundry, it's Foundry. Foundry. All right. How can Foundry, how could they benefit a place like Embark Collective with 125 tech startup type companies?
Well,
how could they benefit you? You want your career to grow better. How do you find the next company who needs Foundry, and it's a tech company that's going to grow from nothing to $100 million? And how can you be the facilitator there, knowing the asset you were just introduced to?
Sure. I mean, that's why it was interesting when you were showing me around. It's like there's a natural fit here.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. So if it's to distill it down really simply, is that if you're a tech startup or you're in the tech space, you're selling a tech solution, then you want to be speaking to the right. You want to be using your resources wisely, and you want to be speaking. All right,
you almost got detailed there for a minute. Speaking to whom?
You want to speak to people who want to buy your product.
Okay.
So
how do I get there? Do I speak to Sarah first?
Well, you can certainly speak to me, and then I'll connect you with someone who can.
So this is your facilitating component there.
Yeah, sure. I'm absolutely happy to facilitate. And the way that it would work is you'd come to Foundry, this is what you want to achieve. We'd help you achieve.
Did you notice we brought Foundry here?
Yes.
We're ahead of the game already.
You're already.
That's right. No, I understand what's going on. This is. I wish I could say this was targeted, but it was.
So you get this. This is for anyone here in this space at the collective, or really who's in the tech space. You don't waste your time. Go to people who are buying a product. So go to the company that has the data, who has the insights, who has the expertise. And it's really that simple. I think it's so competitive these days.
So what you're saying is if you have a tech company like that, don't waste your time going right to the company. Go to the people who mingle at the social hour with all of those people already, so you get served up properly.
You can cold call, till the end of time, but it's much better for you.
So if this was Washington, you'd be a lobbying group.
brokering group.
I don't mean that as bad, by the way. I mean that as the lobbying group knows the parties who to go to and says, "Hey, I know Sarah. Let's just have lunch, and you'll get an understanding and see if it's right."
Absolutely, but with Foundry, you're doing it at scale. I mean, you want your sales pipeline to be rich, full of relevant people. You don't want your pipeline to be kind of hit and miss, kind of random people not really in the mix for it.
Well, I kind of call it this isn't my words. I said but the shotgun approach as opposed to the harpooning approach. Harpooning, where you deliberately look at the big whale and say, where is the one opportunity? It is right there. Yeah. I have to hit right there, as opposed to I'm going to throw 1,000 things against the wall and see where that spaghetti sticks or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to know where you're going. I think you want to send your harpoon out in a smart way because resources are scarce. So target.
Foundry, you want to know where you're going because resources are scarce.
Yep.
That's your tagline?
Oh no, my marketing, my CMO is going to have some words.
No, that was descriptive. That's not literal. I was just repeating the words back in description so that because I understood what you said, and I figured if I said it again, the people listening might understand it a little better as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
That's my job during this part of the day. During my podcasting part is the stuff. So why don't we wind this up? Tell us just. Try to be succinct with this one. Let's get it out there. People who are listening.
Yep.
Sarah, what is Foundry? How can you service someone who's listening to this podcast?
Okay, here we go. In a nutshell, Foundry connects IT buyers with IT sellers.
Perfect. I freaking love that. Thank you for coming in.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you guys for listening to Presentation Hell today. And we'll see you next time.